Are you unable to perform when it is expected of you? Are you unable to get it up for the big game? Do you consistently perform below what you are being paid? Then you have something to learn from the Dallas Cowboys. Today on Finding Traction, Erectile Dysfunction and the Dallas Cowboys. Welcome aboard.
Ready?
When it comes to porn, are you stuck, spinning out, or slipping backwards in your life? If so, then welcome to the Finding Traction podcast, a show dedicated to those who are looking to gain recovery momentum away from porn and toward the life and relationships they have always hoped for. Now, here's your host, Vern Tomke.
Well, this episode is really about me trying to work the thorn out of my life in the loss of my favorite team, the Dallas Cowboys. But, I thought about it in terms of erectile dysfunction, and, there was a lot of parallels. So, first of all, the fact that Dallas failed to perform in their recent loss was an understatement. Nobody picked the Green Bay Packers to beat them. It's one thing when you rise above the expectations and you play with abandon, like the Packers did. Nobody expected them to do what they did, and they looked like they were having a great time out there. But when everybody expects you to win, you expect to win. You set yourself up, expectations to win. Then, everyone expects you to make a deep run into the playoffs, maybe even the Super Bowl. The shock, the disappointment, the anger is even more acute. Me and my wife were watching Jimmy Kimmel last night, and they had this whole clip of people burning their Dak Prescott jerseys. They had this guy who was in such a state. He ripped his big screen TV off the wall, took it out to his front driveway, threw it on the ground, and then got into his big pickup and backed over it front and back as his wife screamed at him. And it was like, oh my goodness. Forget the saying, better to have loved and lost than never loved at all. I'm just simply, that doesn't work for football. So, erectile dysfunction is about the failure to meet expectations. It's about not living up to the moment. It's about having great intentions and failing to live up to them. The Dallas Cowboys are the team of erectile dysfunction. Okay, enough of that. I think I've got it somewhat out of my system. But I do want to talk about the linkage between erectile dysfunction and embedded porn use. And in particular, the rise of erectile dysfunction with men, even and especially young men. I first became aware of this idea from a couple of TED Talks. First one was called The Demise of Guys by Philip Zimbardo. I encourage you to take a listen to that. The other one was called The Great Porn Experiment by Ted Wilson. Either one of those are fascinating, and if you've got young men, I'd encourage you to pass that on and have them watch it, maybe even for you to watch it with them. These are what the findings are. Internet porn is killing young men's sexual performance. And it's not something that can be fixed by medicine or is a psychological problem, but it's caused by the physical changes in brains around embedded and repeated viewing of internet porn. To put it into the words of Ted Wilson, their numb brains, the numb brains of the chronic internet porn watcher, is sending weaker and weaker signals to their bananas, as Ted Wilson could only put it. It starts with lower reaction to porn sites, then there is a general drop in libido, then there becomes problems in getting or sustaining an erection. Gary Wilson actually goes on. He gives this provocative hypothesis that he says many of the social, even medical disorders that we prescribe medicine for, whether it's anxiety, ADHD, or other related things, he says, and in fact, that people use porn to medicate, porn could actually be the very cause of these disorders. In other words, the cure only reinforces the cause. And he talks about going to doctors, young men with ED, erectile dysfunction, and the doctors will say, well, maybe you have a low testosterone, or maybe you need this medication. Nobody ever asks the question, tell me about your online behaviors. So, another thing he said, which was really interesting, was when guys begin to recognize some of the problems they're having physically, it actually is harder for young guys to get their mojo back than older guys. And that was the exact opposite of what I would have expected. For example, he says when the older men stop viewing porn, they usually can see changes within a couple months. But younger men need 4 to 5 months or even longer. And you say, well, why is that? Don't young men, have greater sex drive, higher testosterone, whatever that is? Well, what they're hypothesizing is this. Most of the older guys didn't start with high-speed internet. And of course, high-speed internet is all around arousal and novelty-based. But young people, of course, started on high-speed internet. At the peak of their dopamine production and at the height of their neural plasticity. In other words, for young people, the cement in their brains is a lot wetter when this became embedded in their lives. So a guy by the age of 21, 22, 23 can already have deep ruts in their porn brain, where older guys have not been as deeply impacted. If you want more information from Gary Wilson, you can go on his website, yourbrainonporn.com. Again, those two TED Talk videos are The Demise of Guys by Philip Zimbardo and The Great Porn Experiment by Ted Wilson. Fascinating to listen to. You can find them both on YouTube. There's been other articles. I came across another article recently in Time magazine, and the article was called Porn and the Threat to Virility. Now, you might not be familiar with the word virile, where you get the word virility from, but virile in the dictionary just means marked by strength or force. Virility is commonly associated with vigor, health, sturdiness, and constitution. Of course, virility in this sense is more narrowly associated with one's ability to perform sexually. So in this article, Time magazine article, Porn and the Threat to Virility, it starts with this anecdotal story. Noah Church is a 26-year-old part-time wildland fighter in Portland, Oregon. When he was 9, he found naked pictures on the internet. He learned how to download explicit videos. When he was 15, streaming videos arrived and he watched those, often several times a day, doing that which people often do while watching that genre by themselves. In other words, masturbating. After a while, he says those videos did not arouse him as much, so he moved on to different configurations, sometimes involving just women, sometimes one woman and several guys, sometimes even an unwilling woman. I could find anything I imagined and a lot of stuff I couldn't imagine, he says. After the appeal of those waned, he moved on to the next level, more intense, often more violent. In his senior year of high school, he had an opportunity to have actual sex with a real partner. He was attracted to her and she to him, as demonstrated by the fact that she was naked in her bedroom in front of him. But his body didn't seem to be interested. There was a disconnect between what I wanted in my mind and how my body reacted, he says. He simply couldn't get the necessary hydraulics going. He put it down to first-timers' nerves, but 6 years went by, and no matter which woman he was with, his body was no more cooperative. It responded only to the sight of porn. Church came to believe that his adolescent internet indulgence had somehow caused his problems and that he had what some were now calling porn-induced erectile dysfunction, or PIED. A growing number of young men are convinced that their sexual responses have been sabotaged because their brains were virtually marinated in porn when they were adolescents. The generation has consumed explicit content in quantities and varieties never before possible, on devices designed to deliver content swiftly and privately, all at an age when their brains were more plastic, more prone to permanent change than in later life. These young men feel like unwitting guinea pigs in a largely unmonitored, decade-long experiment in sexual conditioning. The results of the experiment, they claimed, are literally a downer. So, this is all interesting articles. This whole idea of young men expressing shock by discovering that their porn usage has actually changed their ability to be aroused. And again, there's people argue is correlation, causation. Is there other reasons why more people are experiencing erectile dysfunction? All I would say is this: that today, 33% of men under 40 report some sort of ED. This is interesting. A 2016 study of Canadian adolescents showed that 45% admitted to problems with erectile dysfunction. That's from that same Time magazine article. Now, is there other things going on? Is there a great awareness? Is there ads around Cialis and Viagra? And is it just more part of our common vocabulary? Yeah, sure there is. And that obviously is people are a lot more aware of it. So that might be a part of some of the higher reported rates of erectile dysfunction. But there's no doubt if you talk to people who, again, have been marinated in high-speed, arousal-based, novelty-based sex, when they get around and they start and try to develop real-life intimacy with a person, they go, this is not the same. And my body knows that this is not the same. I think, I guess there's a silver lining there. If there's something that can get men's attention, is when their best friend no longer rises to greet them in the morning. That can get our attention, right? It's so true. So, I guess with football, when your team fails to get it up, you can always switch your teams, like my buddy George that doesn't seem to, move from one team to another. Or you can take your television out and you can drive over, it with your pickup. But that's probably not going to do much good. But the good news of porn-induced erectile dysfunction is this: you have the control. You have the control in your hands. Pun intended. Let me just say this. I love working with guys who are looking for a fresh start. Perhaps you're a younger guy and saying, I may have spent the last 2 years, 5 years, 10 years down this porn rabbit hole, but I damn well know this. I don't want to spend the next 2 years, 5 years, 10 years down the same hole. When you find yourself in a hole and you've got a shovel in your hand, they always say, stop digging. You may be saying, I don't like where this has got me and who I have become. So if you're looking for a safe place to talk, or you're looking for a group of guys that you can journey with and share courage and strength with each other, I encourage you to reach out to me. My email is bandofbrothers.care@gmail.com. So till next time, enjoy the rest of the playoffs, and we'll see you then.